All right, welcome to my Week 17 MASL picks. I am back at my home field after a brief departure last week, and I am ready to get these picks underway, so let's jump right to it. Starting off on Friday, we have the Orlando SeaWolves visiting the Baltimore Blast. The SeaWolves last week had a great chance to take a big step forward in their playoff race, but they done screwed that up. They did beat Florida on Friday, but then they immediately turned around and lost to Kansas City the next day. Meanwhile, the Blast, they did make some pretty big progress in their playoff race. They beat Harrisburg, which clinched them a playoff spot, and they are now tied with Utica for first place in the East. The game is also in Baltimore, so I'm going to pick the Blast to win this game, and I expect them to win pretty easily. Maybe not a blowout per se, but still pretty easily. Also on Friday, we have Utica City FC visiting the Mississauga MetroStars. Well, this game's all of a sudden a lot more interesting than it was about a week or so ago, because Mississauga pulled off that massive upset over Utica in Utica this past Sunday. And that's not the first time that Mississauga has caused some trouble for Utica. They came close to beating them earlier on in the season in a game that was in Mississauga. For this upcoming game, though, I think Utica is going to bounce back, and they're going to bounce back pretty strongly. They're going to find a way to beat Mississauga, so I've got Utica picked in this game. And then finally on Friday, we have the San Diego Sockers visiting the Turlock Express. The Express finally got their first road win this past week over the Coyotes in El Paso, but they're still not nearly at the level of the San Diego Sockers, so I'm picking San Diego. Hopping on over to Saturday, we have the Orlando SeaWolves visiting the Harrisburg Heat. If you've watched my videos before, you know that I strongly believe that a road team on the back half of a 2-game road trip tends not to fare very well. And I was looking at the power rankings from the turf and the boards earlier today, and they pointed out that's especially true for Orlando this year. Well, this game happens to be the back half of a 2-game road trip for Orlando, and it's in Harrisburg. Harrisburg, maybe minus that last game against the Blast, has been very strong and very dominant at home. So I'm going to pick the Heat to win this game, and I expect them to win this game rather easily. Still on Saturday, we have the Florida Tropics visiting the Milwaukee Wave. The Wave had kind of a close call this past week against the Ambush, but they managed to pull off the win, and they're still looking really good. Meanwhile, the Tropics, they did have a nice win over Kansas City this past week, but they're still not at the level of the Wave. I'm picking Milwaukee. And then for our final game on Saturday, we have my game of the week, the St. Louis Ambush visiting the Kansas City Comets. I didn't really see this coming, but St. Louis, they're still right in the middle of a playoff race for that second spot in the South Central Division. It turns out that one of the teams they're tied up with is the Kansas City Comets. And these teams have had some great games so far this year. It's been a lot of fun to watch them. I expect to see that trend continue on Saturday, maybe even a little bit more so because of all the playoff implications, but I also expect to see the trend of who wins those games to continue on Saturday. I'm picking the Ambush. Then on Sunday, we have the Mississauga MetroStars visiting the Baltimore Blast. The MetroStars have played the Blast very tight when the games are in Mississauga. When the games are in Baltimore, not so much the case. The Blast have dominated those games. I expect that trend to continue on Sunday. I'm picking the Blast. San Diego Sockers visiting the Dallas Sidekicks. These teams just played last week in San Diego, and I thought the Sidekicks would put up a bit more of a fight than they did in that game. I was wrong. This game might be a little bit closer because it's in Dallas, but I still think the Sockers are gonna win. Then we have Utica City FC visiting the Harrisburg Heat. And oh boy, is this game a tough one to call. I don't know if it's going to be tight. I don't know if it's going to be a blowout. I really don't know who's going to win. This is a tough one to pick, but we'll start with Utica. Utica, this is a must-win for them. And it really didn't seem like that was going to be the case a few weeks ago. But Baltimore has battled their way back and are now tied with Utica for that top spot in the Eastern Division. Meanwhile, Harrisburg, they don't have the greatest record, but they play pretty darn well in Harrisburg, and they have beaten Utica at home before earlier this season. On top of all of this, both teams have to play a game earlier on this weekend, albeit Harrisburg gets to play that game at home. Utica has to play another road game, but Utica has a day of rest in between their two games, and Harrisburg does not have that, so maybe that kind of offsets that a little bit. There's a lot of things going on here. But the thing I keep coming back to for this is last week's game between Mississauga and Utica, where the MetroStars upset the city in Utica. I think that game is going to be a bit of a wake-up call for Utica, and I think it's going to put kind of a pep in their step, if you will. And I think that's going to be enough to give them the edge in this game. So I'm picking the city to beat Harrisburg. Rio Grande Valley Barracudas visiting Flash de Monterrey. These two teams have been a lot of fun to watch, and the Rio Grande Valley Barracudas have given Monterrey a lot of trouble when the game is in RGV. When the game's in Monterrey, it's kind of flip-flopped. Monterrey tends to dominate those games. I see no reason that won't continue on Sunday, so I'm picking the Flash. And then finally, we have the El Paso Coyotes visiting the Ontario Fury. The Coyotes are now the lone team in the MASL to have not won a road game, and I don't think they're going to get it on Sunday. I'm picking the Fury. So that will do it for my Week 17 MASL picks, but make sure you come back next week to see which ones I got right and which ones I got wrong, as well as my Week 18 MASL picks. In the meantime, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.